Hi, I'm Suki. Welcome to Getting Psychic, where you can listen to me use myself to test the theory that anyone can get psychic. Hello and welcome to Getting Psychic. I'm here today with Jo Wong. Jo is a practitioner of Zhi Quantum Energy Kinesiology and much more, which we'll dig into. Jo's mission is to help create a happier and more compassionate world through empowering others to understand the language of their body, mind, and soul, enabling them to uncover chronic physical, mental, and emotional imbalances while consciously living their most fulfilling, inspired, and magical life. Hi, Jo. Welcome.
Hi, Suki. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're here. This is going to be really fun. On your website, you write really eloquently, actually. If anyone has an opportunity after this podcast to just go and dig into Jo's website, I highly recommend it because it's
Thank you.
really interesting. But so you write about your journey to what you call a purpose-led life.
Mhm.
Okay, so it says that this is a story of how you discovered your true purpose and why you're so passionate about helping others realize theirs. Can you give a synopsis of the path that led you to your current work?
Yeah, I guess I was born in Hong Kong, and I grew up in a more or less like secular family, typical Asian upbringing, so quite 3D, but they were very still loving parents, but we were never encouraged to. I guess it's quite a new age thing, but um, back then you were never encouraged to process your emotions, regulate your nervous system, feel everything. So as a child, there was a very distinct differentiation between positive and negative things that you shouldn't feel. And so I grew up with a lot of repressed and suppressed things, which kind of led me into, well, firstly, there are physiological imbalances that results, and a fairly discontent way of living throughout my teenage years and into adulthood as well.
Yeah.
And so, what happened after about 15 years working in corporate, there was this like very untamable feeling that there is something more that I need to do with my life. And once I acknowledged it, it was almost like this wherever I was working. So at the time I was working at Coca-Cola. So everything was turning upside down. My relationships with my colleagues, quote unquote friends at work were turning against me. And ultimately it led to an event where I kind of stood my ground. And for the first time, I kind of spoke up against something that I didn't agree with and not just like go with the flow and, what's the phrase? Go along to get along,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. And then after that, the events that led me into enrolling in a short kinesiology course and then enrolling into an actual diploma course happened very quickly in the space of about maybe 3 to 4 months. And then I resigned.
Wow, you were
And
ready.
yeah, I was ready. And and then the rest is history. Then I was very lucky in that during my studies, I was also able to find a part-time job as well quite easily. And that kind of that income kept coming in, which I
Yeah.
needed, to support my tuition as well. And I started practicing in 2018.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what is the quantum energy kinesiology?
Well, that's the term that I coined after practicing for a while, after a
Mm-hmm.
few years. But what I'm qualified in is actually called holistic kinesiology and mind body medicine. So it's a dual diploma.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is, it's just the awareness and recognition that every imbalance that we experience on a spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical level has a cause. So it's like what I understand to be karma, which is this cause and effect. The cause could be something that happened in your childhood, or it could be something that happened in a past lifetime, or it could be generational, it could be ancestral, that has caused a distortion in your field, which is what I see. I don't see us as just a physical vessel. We are frequencies and vibration. And so this body is just a very narrow, small reflection of what we are. And kinesiology and mind body medicine helps us to understand what is the origin of the cause of this disease and discomfort that you're experiencing in the mind and the body. And when the person understands it and has an awareness of it, then we can help them correct it. So there's a couple of parts in correcting it. First is the awareness for that person so that they can take steps to make changes to their lifestyle or to their lives or their patterns. And the other part of it is, this is the job of the practitioner, is also to use certain techniques to help ease that, the dissolve some of that momentum behind certain patterns and behaviors, so that it's easier for the person to transition and transform into a different, like a better version or a higher version of themselves.
So what does a first session with you look like?
First session, usually there's subsequent session doesn't have a lot of talking, because it's mostly, I understand that to be quite energetic and possibly telepathic, unconsciously or unconsciously. But the first session is definitely there to understand the person's perception of their issue, so how they see the issue have been manifested and how it's manifested from their point of view, and to also understand what they want to achieve out of it. And the other thing that I try to make very clear to them in the first session is that this is not about me coming in to fix everything. So really need to understand that they need to meet me halfway. So their investment in their desire, their sincerity to become a better version of themselves is just as important as me helping guide them.
I really like pointing out the thought of guiding someone to get clarity on what they actually want help with.
Yeah. So sometimes it's not just, they might come in with a physical symptom and that's what they want to resolve. But there could be other things upon chatting to them, that there could be other things going on in their lives that perhaps may even take more precedence than just fixing that physical issue. So that's important, right? Because maybe the cause of the physical symptom is related to the other dominant stresses in their life, which is, a common correlation.
Yeah.
And if they're not clear on what they want to resolve, then you can't really help them as well.
Yeah. Okay. So in your bio, you explain that as a child,
Mm-hmm.
you had very little awareness that your inner world existed, let alone understood how important it is for us to nurture it.
Mm-hmm.
When did you discover your inner world, and what does that encompass for you?
Inner world, I think, in a nutshell, it to me is your sense of self. So your self-esteem, not necessarily confidence, because I don't feel like, I'm confident in some ways, but not confident in how the image of a confident person is not necessarily the same all the time. So I'm definitely not the person who is the life of the party and likes to do public speaking or anything like that. But I have a strong sense of self, which I only really discovered after doing this work. Like after taking on the course of kinesiology, working on myself, clearing my own shit, that's when that inner world when I started to reacquaint with that side of me. It's just getting to know who you are, I'd say, is your inner world.
Yeah.
Yeah. And understanding your motivations behind certain things.
Yeah.
Don't know if is that a adequate enough answer?
Yes, that will suffice.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, it's like something that we're never totally done with, but starting to explore is
Yeah,
really expansive.
it is super expensive because it's not, your inner world sounds like something that is just inside of you, but it encompasses a lot more than that. I think we touched on it earlier. You are this physical being having a 3D experience, but then there are all these other parts of yourself that you're not even aware of, and the potential of you being able to integrate all these aspects of yourself in order to create. I'm not sure about this word manifest, but create the reality, like pulling the subtle energetic parts of you in order to translate that and transform into physical experience. I mean, that's where it's at, right? Like, not many people understand that at all. I don't. I have some idea, but
Mm-hmm.
science can't explain it,
Yeah.
and not many of us are able to completely comprehend,
Right.
what that is.
It's almost like what you refer to as the inner world is actually like an interdimensional space. Like it is way more complex than just like your private thoughts. It is
Yeah,
the vastness of
exactly.
existence. But
Yeah.
I don't know how this connects, but I keep getting a tug to ask you this, like as a person who has made energy healing, a form of energy healing,
Mm.
your business. Basically, I think I'm thinking about like the mind body connection, right?
Hmm.
Like we know that there is one, but if you get too one-sided about it and think about everything spiritually or non-physically, are you missing something? Like I think we can probably connect most physical manifestations to maybe emotional or energetic blockages,
Hmm.
but does it work both ways? Like can we heal something spiritually by doing something physically?
Yeah, I get what you mean. I guess that depends on how the process in which that person is able to take the lessons from the experience of whatever the physical procedure is and how that changes their mindset.
Hmm.
So if the person doesn't change any aspect of their mind post the, whatever it is, procedure, then I don't think it, like the physical manifestation will come back. This is just my interpretation, maybe in another form, but it will return in some way, because the why we have this body of divine design is so that we can take information and make corrections based on what the body is telling us. So if we're not taking that information and integrating it to make better changes in our lives, then the body's going to have to tell you again in another way.
Yeah. Thank you for entertaining that.
You're welcome. Did it make sense though?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm not great at articulating.
Yeah, no, that made
Yeah.
sense. How psychically or intuitively led is your work? Like on a scale of 1 to 10,
Hmm.
how psychic are you?
How do you define psychic?
You tell me.
All right. The most simplest way to define it for me is, rightly or wrongly, is the clairs that you might have, right?
Yeah.
Which I don't think it's that accurate. But if we're talking about in terms of clairvoyance and clair, all this stuff, I'm not very psychic. I can't really see. I can't really. No, I'm emotionally intuitive. I think I'm just empathic, but I'm not very clear. Maybe I am clairsentient, which means that I have a knowing.
Yeah.
But otherwise, as a child, I think I switched off my clair. I used to see things and I used to hear things, but that got way too creepy and spooky, and I was like, no more. So ever since then, I haven't seen or heard anything really.
Yeah.
Minimal. Um, so if it's based on that definition,
Weirdly common.
yeah, that you switch off those abilities.
Yeah. For one
Yeah.
reason or another. But okay, so tell us a weird story, obviously.
Oh, wait, story. I think I was in early teens. We were living in this big house at the time, and weird things just happen. Like I would usually at night, and there was once where I felt like someone was sitting next to me on my bed. So there was like a dip in my mattress,
Yeah.
and it was my mum's voice, and she was like in Chinese. She was saying, "Hey, Sana, like wake up, wake up!" And then I turned around, there was no one there. So that's one incident. And then there was another time where I opened my eyes as I was sleeping, and this like big black figure was floating right on top of me, like this far away. Yeah. And then so I slept the rest of the night under my doona with limited oxygen.
Yeah.
And it was just a lot of creepy stuff. And I wake up hearing clowns laughing.
No.
And yeah,
Now you've gone too far. Absolutely not.
yeah, no, you can understand why I didn't want to hear or see things anymore after
Oh
that.
my God.
Yeah, it was creepy. But I think it also was an indication of where I was at, because now that have that awareness and have done tons of work on myself, I don't think I would have creepy experience with that. If I was to see things, it wouldn't be that
Yeah.
like super lower astral scary stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Well, yeah, I feel like if you turned them off, you could probably turn them back on.
I could, but there's also, it's like that sense deprivation thing where sometimes maybe you're meant to not have all these things switched on because maybe you're meant to hone a certain sense so that you can get better at it. And
Yeah,
then at
that makes
some
sense.
point, maybe you'll get a feeling that, okay, maybe now it's time for me to reactivate those things. But, I haven't quite got that nudge yet so
Yeah.
far. Maybe in the future. Yeah.
No rush. Well, okay, but so you're saying that you know your clairs are turned off, whatever. Although I have my doubts. Just based on talking to you for the past 22 minutes. You did mention earlier that you have telepathic connections with your clients.
It's more, so I do this thing called muscle testing, which is like the premise of kinesiology, right? So kinesiologists can practice in a very broad way after they like finish their diploma.
Mm-hmm.
But the basis of it is something called muscle monitoring or muscle testing. And so the practitioner would isolate or identify a specific muscle in the body. And when I was learning this, the typical muscle would be the anterior deltoid, which is a very large muscle on your arm. So the client would have hold their arm up at a certain angle. They have to lock the elbow in some way just to create that sense of steadiness.
Yeah.
And then the practitioner would apply a very gentle but steady and stable, repeatable pressure to monitor the muscle. And magically, the muscle will respond in two ways mostly. One is unlocking, so it weakens, and the other way it can respond is that it can lock, so you can't actually push the arm down. So depending on how the practitioner is asking the questions or the context, you can actually get a lot of information from that because it's the body's natural built-in biofeedback system, and it can tell you not only what the subconscious. For me, I explore more than just the subconscious. It can tell you things from whether a certain energy system or the imbalances is caused by something that is beyond this current lifetime or not. So at school, we didn't really learn about past lives. We learned about past resolution, but I think in order for them to keep operating as a teaching institution, you can't really go there. It's a little bit too woo-woo.
So annoying. Yeah.
But then as you see more clients, like it's inevitable that you would trace something back to something that is beyond this current lifetime. So kinesiology is very useful in helping you to narrow down where and when the cause of the distortion of the pattern came from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool. I mean, I highly recommend anyone just to like play with it. I dabbled a little bit with a modality called emotion code, and it relies on.
I read that book. Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah,
but it relies on muscle testing.
Yes.
So you can test yourself and in different ways, and you basically are getting answers from your higher self or just
Yeah.
your subconscious, and it is so crazy.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
So do you do that on yourself, or do you practice on other people as well, like your
I've
family?
I've done both.
Yeah.
And the premise of that modality is like releasing quote unquote trapped emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be like, okay, so is it a current life, a past life? Is it from the mother's lineage? Da, 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 like you can feel your way through all of that
Yeah,
stuff.
it's unlimited, right? The questions you ask is unlimited. And depending on what energies you're connecting into, because at the start of the session, there are four main, I don't even know what to call it, but it's four main energies that I would try and connect to, not just in myself, but for the client. So I make sure that both myself and the client are connected to our higher selves. We're connected to our spirit guides, because I think I don't think, I know we all have spirit guides, that we have a clear connection to source, and we have a clear connection to our body's wisdom and consciousness, because those are the four key things that, my spirit guides have stipulated are important to help uncover the origin of the trauma. Before I even start balancing, I have to make sure that all those channels are clear. And what can obstruct the communication with any of these channels is, and I don't know whether you want to go into this, but
Yes, I do.
sometimes entities and like attachments will get in the way, because they have taken residence in your field,
Totally.
and they don't want you to have these clear connections that can, potentially kick them out, so to speak. So I have found that this is one of the most common things that we all have. Like, we used to think, oh, possession doesn't, it happens very rarely. And then you see these in movies, the drama of the exorcism, and it's just like, so it's portrayed as something that doesn't happen very often.
Right. Just that one
But it's,
random girl.
yeah, like, and the signs of it is projectile vomiting.
Yeah, your head spins.
Yeah. And it's often very understated. Like, it's not obvious at all.
Yep. It's just
Yeah.
like a nagging little presence. I mean, it can be as simple as like it manifests as like a inner voice that tells you that you suck or something.
Yeah, 100%.
That can be because of something like feeding off of your energy field,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And it could be something that's very obvious to a close friend, where this person was this way 12 months ago, and all of a sudden it did a 180 flip. It's like they were lovely and humble, but next minute they're aggressive and, mean spirited and, just completely not themselves. I mean, that is a very obvious sign too. Or they,
Right.
fall into a deep depression, and the
Yeah.
sister doesn't even recognize her anymore. So these are the signs that there could be some form of entity influence.
Okay, so how do you diagnose an entity?
Yeah.
How do you clear it?
Diagnose is using muscle testing. So when I go through that first step of making sure that the connections to all these four channels are clear, I will ask if there's anything getting in the way of that. And then I can muscle test, well, what is it? Is it a belief? Is it a trauma, or is it something else? So you just go through a list, and I have it in my head because I do it. Like, I've done it so many times.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's like degrees of um, wickedness. I don't know the right word. So the demonic ones are this probably the ones that can potentially deny the person's access to their free will.
Wow.
So if you let someone know who's got a demonic entity in them, and you tell them that's what's happening, and you're offering to remove it, they will probably say no, because it's not them saying no.
That's like, I picture that one as like sitting on your shoulder smoking a cigar. Like total creep.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, okay, so if it prevents itself from being removed,
yeah.
how there's no workaround?
Well, no, then I will ask my guides and source. It's like, well, do I have, because ultimately they're the boss, right?
Yeah.
These little demons, like they are not meant to be in this body, have no right to stay. So I will always check permission anyway. And if they give me the permission, usually with demonic entities, the instruction is just to, well, just get it out. You don't even have to ask
Override
the
anyway.
person. Yeah, yeah. Because they don't belong there in that field.
So you're asking the higher self.
So the higher self, that the clients, well, the persons, because often they're not the client, because it's probably someone else asking me to remove something on their behalf. The guides and source. Yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
Is it?
No, not to me, but I always like am so uh all of that stuff is so intriguing.
Yeah.
Um
So the second part of the question you asked is how do you remove it?
yeah.
So if the person's aware of it, I think anyone has the power to remove it from themselves, and it's really just sending them love. I know it's as cringy as that sounds.
Yeah.
Sometimes I imagine just hugging the damn thing
Ugh.
until it's like it feels so much unconditional love
Yeah.
that they're like, okay, well, this portal has opened up back to source. This is actually where I belong. I'm going back home.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if they're stubborn, then it could be. So what I usually use as a tool is visualization of different frequency lights, so colors. So maybe it's magenta, maybe it's a combination of different colors, but it's like streams of uh, different wavelengths of light that I use to direct it to that. It's not directing it to I'm directing love to it, but the light actually opens up. This is what I imagine in my head anyway, opens up that tunnel or the gateway for them to return home.
Hmm. Did someone teach you this methodology, or did this come to
Uh,
you in meditation, or what?
it I use a combination of downloading and muscle testing to see whether it's accurate. Like what I'm getting as a instruction or message from my guides and source is um, I have a sense of what it is, and then I muscle test to see how accurate it is.
Okay, Joe, that sounds pretty psychic to me.
Well, because I'm using muscle testing, I'm always, and I have a science background, so I'm always not like maybe I'm a little bit more left brain than most psychics, and that's why I don't think I'm like psychic in a conventional way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a spectrum, okay, and we're all on it.
I was trying.
But yeah, I think if you're like talking to your guides and getting good advice, even if you're cross-checking with muscle testing,
Yeah,
you're good.
yeah. But I think everyone can do that if the intention is there, and you are checking that you're not. There are a series of questions that I ask to make sure I'm not like connecting in with dark entities or um, entities that are trying to mislead you but pretending to be light.
Yeah.
All these things. If you have a clear channel to pure light, and you know how to muscle test, it's actually it's something that anyone can do.
How do you muscle test yourself?
Muscle testing for yourself is actually harder than muscle testing for other people.
Yeah,
Has it been your
so
experience?
yeah, it's weird, but I did eventually figure it out. But it's like
Yeah.
when you're in meditation and you're like, "Oh, okay, my guides are telling me this is what I'm to do."
Mm.
What do? You're like like how are you muscle testing yourself physically?
Well, I do this. Is that the actual physical way of muscle testing, or this is something that I picked up from my first kinesiologist,
And
and she used to do
describe
like
what
this
you're
little
doing.
flicks. So I've got my index finger against my thumb, and it's literally just so if it's locked, then it doesn't flick open. If it's a no, well, depending on how you set up the question, right?
Yeah,
It
I
could
see
be a
what you're
yes or
saying.
no. Yeah, yes and no. Yes, no.
So it's like
It's just a
you're
lot quicker.
putting the nail of your index finger against
Yeah,
the
The
top
pad
of
of the
the
thumb.
pad of your thumb,
Yeah.
and you're creating like kind of like an OK symbol. And then it's like if your thumb is locked enough for your finger to not pop
Mm-hmm.
out,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
yes. And then the
Mm-hmm.
weakness in muscle testing is the
Yeah.
indicator of the no.
Yeah.
I've figured out this super weird thing. Maybe it's not that weird. This super cool thing recently where I sort of started like using my body as like,
Pendulum.
yeah, it is. I was going to say pendulum, like
Mm-hmm.
a pendulum. So, and I don't know how this came to me, but I mean, probably, it was given to me. But like, so I can ask yes or no questions. And what happens for me is when the question is a yes, it feels like my heart is beating up my neck, okay? Like
Oh
sort of
wow.
like if you think about like the flow of your blood and it
Mm-hmm.
feels like it's beating up. And then when the answer is a no, it feels like it's beating down. And it's crazy because now I'll have these long meditations where I'm literally like having conversations and like connecting with guides and asking all of these crazy questions. And
That
it's
is
like, and it's
amazing.
like, yes, no.
You
So
don't
I'm just
even
like,
have to use muscle testing. That's just so cool.
well, try it. It's so weird. I don't know if it will come through for anyone else, but I figured it out when I was in the bathtub. And I think when you're in hot water, maybe your blood pressure's higher or something.
Have you tried it outside of the bath?
I have, and it works.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not the water.
But that's how I figured it out. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, I have never heard of it, and I would have never been like, let's see if I can feel my heartbeat in my neck. Like that. That wasn't like.
Do you literally feel the heart beating or just
It's like
in?
it's like almost like you feel your blood pumping. It's very subtle, but I have like confirmed it many times. It's like you feel your blood pumping up and then or blood pumping down. I don't know. Try it later. See what you think.
That is a very extremely subtle form of,
Divination.
yeah.
But I have heard after I figured that out, I heard someone mention this. Like I think people teach this. I think people teach you how to use your body as a pendulum. I just don't
Yeah.
know. I haven't explored it. I just stumble upon that and I'll just have these meditations where I'm like, "Hey, how's it going?" And just ask all these
Wow.
questions. So,
That's
anyway,
amazing. Yeah.
but listen, Joe, this is not my interview. So, um, okay. So, this is a question that's connected to my last question, but
Mhm.
did your intuition, telepathy, all of the non-physical information and knowing, did that grow with your practice
100%.
once you started treating patients?
Yeah. I mean, it's like any other muscle, right? The more you do it, the more in tune you are with it, the stronger it gets. So, yeah, 100%. In what ways? I don't know if you'll get this, but sometimes it's like they'll get you to do things many, many times and it almost gets boring. It's so repetitive. And then at some point, it's like the initiation has been completed and everything gets easier. So instead of having to do the repeat, it's like, oh, now you can do this. And so that's always happening and evolving.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, let me see. If I have a standard procedure where I have to go through each organ system to do something, and it takes a lot of time, but it's the same thing with every organ. And sometimes you can, at some point, I was able to say, okay, this is something that my superconscious can do now without me consciously being involved. And so it will continue doing that in the background while I work on something else. And then when I come back to it, like it's done.
Interesting. So, I
Yeah, but
mean,
that's just one way. It's just one way.
I need an example of how you were saying they make you repeat something over and over again until you know it, and then you're better at it or something.
A simple example would be what as a correction technique. What I learned at school was acupressure. So it's pretty, you know, it's not very woo woo. It's like acupuncture, but you're using your fingers, the electromagnetic
Yeah.
sensitivity of your fingers to activate certain points. And then as my practice evolved, and also because I had to work through, I wanted to, I didn't have to, I worked through lockdown, then there are different things that you have to adapt to because you're no longer in physical contact with the client. So then initially it's like, well, then you imagine that you have a pillow there and you are holding the point. And then it evolves into you don't even have to hold anything now, you just visualize
Got it.
light. And instead of taking, in the past, maybe we were taught to at least hold the point for 10, 15 minutes to make meaningful change. It can take maybe like 10 seconds for me
Yeah.
to visualize something.
Yeah. Okay, so there's something on your website. I think this is something that you touched on earlier, but did you mention 3 or 4 elements that you
I have not, but that is one of the key things in one of the systems that I use.
Okay, so can you describe what that is?
Yeah, so this is something that I learned at college, and it's based around the traditional Chinese medicine model of the 5 elements. So it's
Okay.
a bit different to the Vedic or like Indian system. So there's fire, earth, metal, water, and wood, and they all have denote an area of psychology. So, for example, fire is all about true expression and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and any distortions that come under that. Earth is all about walking my true path, and where am I allowing other people's ideas or me wanting to people please to detract me from my truth. Metal is, am I embodying my true value, which is not measurable by anything external to us. It's like inherent. And water is how connected I am to my intuition so that I'm not influenced and I'm not reacting to fears or, fears that are not really endangering me in a physical way. So not true fears. Wood is all about unconditional acceptance of myself, and where am I critical of myself? Where am I getting frustrated at myself for not being at a certain level, or where am I overly achievement oriented? So when any of those elements are out of balance, or even if just one, it could affect everything else because it operates as a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a really useful system for me to use as a diagnostic tool as well, because in speaking to someone, if they're very much a fire type and they have a strong fear of overexposure and they have an issue with expressing their emotions, then very likely they would have symptoms that are very fire related. So fire related symptoms, because what constitutes fire is different organs, right? Each element has different organs. So the fire is heart, pericardium, small intestine, and triple heater. So they're not specifically all organs, but you would expect that that person will be most vulnerable or susceptible to imbalances in heart or
Hmm.
or absorption of nutrients, for example, like in the small intestine. Or it could also express as muscular tension or discomfort in their body. So fire element, usually the person would experience pain between the scapula or between the shoulder blades. So all these things, or they're prone to injuries in certain parts of the body. Then you would be able to, like, they're all clues as to if the person's experiencing a lot of if they've had like knee reconstruction for 3 times and they're only in their 40s, then it's very likely that it's related to the water element. It's just a very, very clear way for me to be able to identify imbalances and issues in the body and mind.
So how do you evaluate a client and or patient and know what elements you're working with just by knowing what they're associated with, or do you?
What determines the constitutional pattern is called, I use the system Bagua, so using the date of birth, it gives you the constitutional makeup, which is 3 components, and that tells you what elemental influences they will likely have in their life. And that also gives you an idea. And I don't like it's always
Yeah.
just a guide, right? You can't take anything as the ultimate because it just often will just
Yeah.
mislead you and limit your experience. But it is useful in helping me understand, okay, so well, this person is likely to have this set of patterns. So as I talk to them, are they giving evidence that that fits that constitution? And what are they experiencing in their bodies, in the physical bodies? Are those symptoms, do they match what is, being calculated in their constitutional makeup? And that, gives a good picture, a starting point anyway, because often there
Yeah.
are other things involved, as to like as a diagnostic tool to help me understand what needs to be addressed.
Cool. So on your site, I read this. On your healing journey, you will be called to embody the courageous warrior, to bravely confront all of what you had not wanted to face, to feel all of what you have been conditioned to suppress, to forgive and release yourself from all of the pain you thought was for you to carry. You are ready to embrace your higher will and traverse the mysterious domain of your mind, body, soul. There are no conditions that you lack the power within to heal. So, on my own journey, I've been coming to learn more and more every day that healing is something that we incarnated in these human lives with the intention to do. And that we
Mm-hmm.
accumulate stored information throughout sometimes lifetimes in order to do so. And I think that there used to be a part of me that even saw like weakness in the desire to heal. Like I genuinely thought that pain was for me to carry, and even thought that I was good at it. And I think some other
Okay.
people might feel that way. I also think that many modern societies fuel that inclination with their framework.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
just wondered what your thoughts on all of that are.
Yeah, I think like Suki, I see that a lot in even in the New Age community, where supposedly they would have that awareness that they don't have to suffer, but there's still that. I don't know if this is partly to do with what in the community that I associate with, partly to do with like the guru. I don't know if this is to do with like the concept of guru
Yeah.
worshipping as well, because a lot of that like karmic stuff, like their understanding of karma is very different
Mm-hmm.
to mine. So it's often people come in thinking that, well, this is just my karma and
Yeah.
I have to live it out. It's probably similar to what you used to feel, right? But it's
No, I mean, I don't think I wasn't thinking about karma. I was just like, okay,
yeah,
I'm carrying whatever burdens that I sort of absorbed in this life. It was all very 3D and like,
mm-hmm.
and I'm fine. And
Okay,
I got it. That kind of thing. But now what's
yeah,
opening up
mm.
is on this path is like, oh, I don't need to be fine.
Yeah,
And like healing is a amazing thing to pursue. And
yeah. It's a
yeah,
way to liberate
and we're
yourself.
actually signed up to do
Yeah,
it. I feel like that just keeps getting
Yeah.
reaffirmed over and over again.
Yeah. And having said that, I think there's still partly certain events that maybe is written as someone's written into someone's destiny that they have to fulfill. It doesn't necessarily have to be in pain and suffering, though. But as far as illness is concerned, well, it's actually quite complex because some babies are born into the world with conditions that they are meant to like live with, and you can't change it. And I don't have an explanation for that because I like to think,
Well, yeah, and to be clear, I'm kind of speaking of healing on a soul level at a certain point. Like I kind of shifted to not just like yes, certain things cannot be healed.
Yeah.
But it's part of the soul's path.
I agree, actually, because the soul would have agreed to take on certain mission as well, and that could take the form of, well, I have to go through this in order for me to achieve this mission. So, but on a soul level, I completely agree. It's like whatever it is that is not aligned with the soul's path, you have the ability to resolve. Yeah, as long as it's aligned with the soul's will.
Yeah.
Or the higher will.
Yeah. Okay, we got to dig into this. So, what you have always considered to be your greatest weakness is a clue to where your true greatness lies. I would like you to please quickly give us a full dissertation on this sentence.
Dissertation. Oh my God, I'll have to do some citations as well. So what I mean by that is, it's kind of like what they say: when you confront your biggest fear, then it opens you up to the greatest growth. It's similar to that. What I have found in my personal experience is that I had like extreme low self-esteem growing up. And the fear of being wrong was very limiting. I think that's a product of my upbringing as well, because you're kind of conditioned to think that there is only ever one right answer, and it's very black and white. And so for me, overcoming that distortion helped me to open up like this world that is not bound by anything, and there's lots of gray area and nuances, and that is where I feel most like I've mentioned before that I almost think sometimes I have ADHD, but I have not grown tired of this exploring this boundless, untapped reality that we are continuously trying to learn about, or still learn about. And so for overcoming, it's not overcoming that, it's just overcoming the fear of not being wrong. Like it's just the acceptance, acknowledgement that you can't get it wrong opened up a lot for me in my life.
Yeah. What is your greatest perceived weakness, and how do you see that as a strength?
For me, it was not fitting in and not feeling accepted for who I am, for who I was. And, so me constantly having to change and morph into a different, someone that's just not me, just for the purpose of fitting in, and losing myself as part of that process. It means that, there are that unique aspects of me that are also being lost, and therefore I'm taking away the potential for it to be the truest and highest expression of me. So when I overcame that and decided, well, I'm just going to be me from now on, there will be times where there's still going to be times where I'm like, well, I need to be a certain way in these circumstances or towards these people, but I'm aware of it and I catch myself. But before, it's I worked at an alcohol company, and I thought, I don't even like partying. I don't like drinking, but maybe that's what I have to do, just to fit in. So all these little things were, the last company I worked at, it was very cliquey, and it was like, being part of the mean girls
Yeah.
in my
You're
team.
like betraying
So maybe I
yourself.
have to be like that, so it's in order for me to just survive.
Yeah. Ugh.
So all these are taking, every time you do that, every time I felt like I did that, I lose part of myself.
Yeah.
And then you become weaker. You weaken your energy field
Totally.
by doing that. And people are not aware of it. And that's not how you do the best work you can do. So the way I see that is, if you have a strong sense of who you are, you have a strong energy field, then you can do your best work
Mm-hmm.
and fulfill your purpose as best as you can, whatever you're meant to do in the world. And there's also when you open up yourself to receiving your, or not receiving because you already always had it, but learning and being able to share the gifts.
Yeah.
That only you can do.
Cool. Okay. I'm satisfied.
Good.
Well, thank you so much. I think we should wind it down, but I'm so grateful to you for joining me and talking about your practice.
Thank you so much for having me. I, didn't know what to expect from sharing, what I do, but it's actually quite, I enjoy it because under normal circumstances, there is actually not many channels for me to share openly about what I do.
Yeah.
in a receptive way.
Totally.
Not where people don't think I'm crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I really appreciate it.
This is a safe space for sure. And your work came extremely highly recommended. So I was very excited to talk. How can people find you though?
Best way is through my website, which is Zhikin, spelled ZHIKIN.com.au.
Okay, cool. And I will link that in the notes. And I highly recommend just going through and reading Jo's story, because it's really beautiful. And I think you'll sort of see, a lot of people will see themselves in it.
Yeah, that's what I really wanted to share, because I know that, the hero's journey is it's a common thread in the collective consciousness.
Yeah, it's cool. Okay, thank you, Jo.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as we did. Be sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss a new episode. If you liked today's episode, please consider leaving a review to help the other psychics find their way here.